Good evening, it's 8 p.m. here local time in Warsaw. I'm Diana Skaya and you're watching World News Tonight here on TVP World. Romania plunged into a constitutional crisis. Now in this episode, we'll go live to Bucharest, where our correspondent Paweł Trzaskowski will walk us through these unexpected developments. We'll also connect with our correspondent in Georgia, Arleth, for updates on the mass protests that have been shaking up the country for the past week. And more on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines. Poland's largest opposition party leader loses immunity over assault accusation. The EU and Mercosur strike a trade deal, but France and Poland oppose. And Poland celebrates St. Nicholas Day. And we begin with breaking news from Romania, where presidential elections in the country have officially been annulled. Now, on Friday, the country's constitutional court ruled that the first round of voting is invalid due to the threat of Russian interference in the process. Now, our correspondent Paweł Trzaskowski is in Bucharest, and we go live to him right now. Now, Paweł, how is the political crisis in Romania unfolding at the moment?
Well, Romanian politics took yet another unexpected turn, this time on Friday, with the Constitutional Court's ruling stating that the presidential elections are nullified altogether. Uncertainty, confusion, but also indifference. These are the reactions I was met with when I asked the residents of Bucharest about their feelings when it comes to the Constitutional Court ruling. I would like you to have a listen to some of the responses that I've got from them.
I don't think it's the best decision right now as of the situation that we have. I think that we need to speak our minds and we need to choose. So
and
it's
if you had a choice, who would you choose?
Pro-European, of course. I don't know what to expect, actually. Everything is so unexpected nowadays that we don't even know what to think right now as of today.
Honestly, it was just too much publicity around the case, so I just assumed that there was too much public pressure on the authorities to actually cancel the elections.
So, Paweł, we just heard some of those Romanians talking. So, what can Romania expect in the coming weeks?
Well, the presidential electoral process will start anew, and later today the current president of Romania, Klaus Iohannis, who was supposed to conclude his presidency just before Christmas, said that he will remain in office until the new president is elected. This means that it should be Klaus Iohannis who will convene the new parliament who was elected just last Sunday, and then nominate the new prime minister, who will then be tasked with forming the new government. And this new government will then decide on the future shape and the date of presidential elections. So definitely there is a lot to unpack in current Romanian politics, and this is why our reporter Ovidiusz Nicea has this story.
Romanians were preparing for a presidential runoff this weekend. Emotions were running high as many voters saw the future of their country on the line. At the last moment, the election was called off by the country's top court.
My God, this comes very late. This comes two weeks after the election and just on the eve of the second round. Well, they better have some ironclad evidence.
On Wednesday, Romanian President Klaus Iohannis declassified intelligence alleging that Russia interfered in the democratic process. This was supposedly done through a social media campaign, which gave a boost to far-right candidate Călin Georgescu. Ahead of the first round of the vote, Georgescu was seen as an outsider and was polling in single digits. In the end, he managed to win the first round with around 23% of the vote. On Monday, the Constitutional Court upheld these results. Now the same institution has rejected them.
This can produce even stronger backlash against the Romanian elites, which have been accused by the anti-systemic parties that they are not accountable, that they don't want power alternation, and these decisions can well feed into these kinds of narratives.
Romania's Social Democratic Prime Minister Marcel Ciolacu has approved of the court's ruling to annul the election, saying it's, quote, the only correct decision. Centrist presidential candidate Elena Lasconi, on the other hand, believes the ruling tramples on Romanian democracy.
The decision is illegal, immoral, and crushes the very essence of democracy, the vote. Such a deviation will cost us dearly in the years to come.
The term of incumbent President Klaus Iohannis ends right before Christmas. After that, the role of the head of state can be temporarily taken over by the President of the Romanian Senate. The rerun of the first round will take place on a date set by the government.
The presidents of Poland and the Baltic states issued a joint statement on Friday condemning the use of force against the Georgian people and appealing to Georgian authorities to immediately cease their violent actions. Now, the number of law enforcement interventions indicates an attempt to intimidate the opposition. Now, let's go live to our correspondent Don Arleth, who is in Georgia's capital of Tbilisi. Good evening, Don. To my understanding, you spoke to leading opposition figures from the Georgian political scene during yesterday's protests. What more can you tell us about this on those developments?
Yes, so again, tens of thousands of people have taken to the streets here in Tbilisi, and well, these protests have been rather peaceful over the last couple of days. There's definitely a smaller police presence, there's less provocation, and so this is allowing peaceful demonstrations here in the capital of Tbilisi. Now, we talked to a former MP just last night. He's tried to resign. He actually won a seat in these elections, which he's calling a sham anyway, and he's tried to resign from his party, and he described to us exactly what the situation is like here and what the authorities are doing to the country.
They are trying to create now the atmosphere of terror. They arrested lots of people. They raided lots of political party offices, but also some activist offices. We don't expect that it's going to be an easy fight, but as I said, we don't have any other choice. Either we win now or this country becomes Belarus.
We are at the beginning of the road, but we see first cracks of resignations, quite massive resignations of public servants, including in law enforcement vertical, and a huge resignations in our diplomatic service. And that, in package with massive protests, is the combination we need to sustain and grow in order to crumble the regime, just as we did against the communists 30 years ago.
Now, protesters and the opposition are demanding the release of all prisoners that were unlawfully detained during these protests and to cease prosecution in all of these cases. They also want to hold new elections here in Georgia. The elections which were held on October 26th, they say are just plagued with irregularities, ballot stuffing, vote buying, and therefore they need to hold new elections in the country. By a new independent election administration, this is key to having new elections because they say that the current administration is flawed. And also there needs to be political neutrality of all law enforcement agencies. And of course, we spoke with another prominent opposition member, Giga Bakeria, about these protests and exactly how these protests are going to break the Georgian dream.
Thank you so much, Don Arleth, coming to us from Tbilisi in Georgia. Russian and Belarusian troops will conduct joint drills near the Polish border, as outlined in a new defense pact signed by Russian President Vladimir Putin and Belarusian leader Alexander Lukashenko. Now, the agreement also sees Moscow extending its nuclear umbrella over Belarus, strengthening their military alliance. Our Piotr Miszczuk has this next report.
A very warm welcome in Belarus is something Putin would be very unlikely to receive in 124 countries that are members of the International Criminal Court, a court which issued an arrest warrant for Putin in connection with his war crimes in Ukraine. But Belarus is not one of them and remains the Kremlin's staunch ally, every now and then strengthening their kinship ties under the joint name of the Union State.
With the signing today of the concept of security of the Union State and the Interstate Treaty on Security Guarantees, we are reaching an unprecedented level of strategic alliance and coordination of actions in the military sphere.
The agreement signed on the occasion of Putin's visit to Minsk allows, first and foremost, for a possible use of tactical nuclear weapons stored in Belarus. That would lower the threshold for a nuclear strike, stipulating that Moscow could resort to such measures in response to an attack with conventional weapons. Though this decision was already announced last month, it has now been signed into life by the two heads of state.
Among other things, we are talking about Russian tactical nuclear weapons located on the territory of the Belarusian Republic at the suggestion of the President of Belarus.
Following the signing, Putin reportedly told Lukashenko that Russia could deploy in Belarus its Oreshnik intermediate-range hypersonic missiles capable of carrying multiple nuclear warheads.
We have, and I am not joking, certain locations where we can deploy these weapons. Only one condition: the targets for these weapons will be designated by the Belarusian military and political leadership.
Though it might look like Belarus is the bigger beneficiary of the agreement, according to journalist Alexander Papko of the non-regime Belsat TV station, the deal does benefit Russia.
Russia is continuing nuclear blackmail of Western countries, and it uses Lukashenko regime for this.
Morning and also welcome.
Of similar opinion is Poland's foreign minister Radosław Sikorski, who doesn't believe the treaty was signed by equal partners.
Lukashenko's submission to Putin is nothing new.
But Poland and its allies might be concerned about the treaty, as it means intensified activity from Belarus, says Franek Wiaciorka, advisor to exiled Belarusian opposition leader Svetlana Cichanouskaya.
It just means the continuation of the constant provocations that Poland, Lithuania, Latvia were facing in last years, continuous hybrid attacks with migrants, continuous provocations with military. Military drills are planned for next year, probably with the nuclear drills as well.
Russia, which is the world's biggest nuclear power, regularly holds joint military exercises with Belarus. Next September, Belarus will host drills of the post-Soviet military bloc led by Russia, and that will take place in the close proximity to the border with Poland.
The European Union and Mercosur have finally reached an agreement on a free trade deal. Now, despite the success, European countries like Poland and France are still against the implementation of the deal, which European legislators have yet to vote on.
This scene is the fruit of 25 long years of backbreaking effort aimed at developing trade between the EU and South America. Now, after the latest round of negotiations, the free trade agreement between Mercosur and the EU is closer than ever to being closed.
Let me address my fellow Europeans. This agreement is a win for Europe. 60,000 companies are exporting today to Mercosur, 30,000 of them small and medium enterprises. They benefit from reduced tariffs, simpler custom procedures, and preferential access to some critical raw materials. This will create huge business opportunities.
The deal is aimed at removing tariffs on all goods imported by the EU from the South American bloc. On the flip side, Mercosur would remove tariffs on 90% of industrial goods imported from the EU, including cars, machinery, IT equipment and textiles, but also chocolate, spirits and wine.
Economically, this is a win-win agreement. Europe is already Mercosur's second largest investment and trade partner.
While countries like Germany and Spain are fully supportive of the trade treaty, not everyone on the European side of the deal is happy about the agreement. France fears that a sudden influx of cheap poultry, beef and other foodstuffs from South America would undercut its farmers. And those same farmers agree.
It's to show that the money generated by agriculture is in fact completely absorbed by all these cooperatives, all these industries, all these traders who sell our goods and leave us nothing. but they make colossal sums on the products that we were able to produce with our work.
Among those who are also opposed to the deal are Poland, Ireland and Austria, with Warsaw being the largest exporter of poultry in Europe. However, this anti-trade agreement coalition is not large enough to block the deal in the European Parliament. To reject this deal, it would take at least one more large EU country to vote against it. Italy, which so far hasn't decided on which way it'll vote, is seen as a potential ally to France in its efforts to bar the adoption of the deal. If Italy was to choose to vote against the agreement, it would tip the scales in favor of not adopting the proposed pact. Firstly, though, the agreement has to pass a multitude of legal checks and a round of translations before it lands on the desks of EU legislators, as the European Parliament will have to consent to the deal. This leaves France, Poland and other opponents plenty of time to expand its trade deal opposition coalition.
Jarosław Kaczynski, the leader of the largest opposition party in Poland, has lost his immunity in the Polish parliament earlier today. Now, the chairman of the Conservative Law and Justice Party is accused of punching an activist who, according to Kaczynski, insulted the memory of his late brother, former Polish President Lech Kaczynski. Our Kazimierz Łysiak reports.
It happened so fast you might have missed it. But upon closer inspection, it does seem like the leader of the biggest opposition party in Poland landed a few punches on the face of activist Zbigniew Komosa back in September of this year. And these blows now carry more weight than they seemed at first. The Polish parliament has waived the immunity of Jarosław Kaczyński, the Law and Justice Party chairman. Asked about it immediately after the vote, the Conservative leader turned to accusations himself.
The man who provoked me is simply a bum, but also quite possibly an agent of foreign actors. He received his small punishment and will be punished even harsher in the future.
With his immunity waived, Kaczynski will now face a court case. His alleged victim earlier filed a civil lawsuit against him. The Polish law is clear on the subject.
Whoever strikes a human being or in another manner breaches their personal inviolability shall be subject to a fine, restriction of liberty, or imprisonment for up to 1 year.
But there is one condition which could help Kaczynski avoid punishment.
If the act was caused by the provocative conduct of the injured person, the court may waive the imposition of a penalty.
The entire scuffle in question began when the Conservative leader destroyed a wreath laid by Komosa in front of the monument dedicated to the victims of the 2010 Smolensk plane crash. The disaster killed all 96 passengers on board, including Kaczynski's brother, former Polish president Lech Kaczynski. The wreath laid by the activist had an inscription which outraged the Conservative leader.
In memory of the 95 victims of Lech Kaczynski who, ignoring all procedures, ordered pilots to land in Smolensk in extremely difficult conditions, rest in peace, the Polish nation.
The Polish MPs on Friday rejected the vote on waiving the immunities of Kaczynski and several other Conservative MPs for defacing the wreath. But the former Deputy Prime Minister lost his parliamentary protection in the vote on the alleged assault against Zbigniew Komosa.
Although physical violence used by MPs has been condemned today, I'm afraid that the vote on defacing the wreath will only keep the violence in place.
Law and Justice members, on the other hand, are calling these accusations a political witch hunt. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk disagrees.
My government doesn't work like this. I don't just sit in my office and tell them, arrest this guy, sentence this guy. It all has to be done in accordance with the constitution. The police, prosecution and courts are responsible for these matters.
While the leader of the Law and Justice Party is unlikely to receive a harsher penalty than a small fine, that is not the biggest problem for the Conservative opposition as of late. The state prosecutor is investigating several right-wing former government officials for various types of fraud, mishandling of public funds and invigilation of political opponents.
Now we'll get into more details about that case later on with our guest in studio. Now moving on to a happy story here in Poland, where Western Christian countries like Poland are celebrating St. Nicholas Day, exchanging presents to mark the feast of St. Nicholas of Myra, who's known to Christians as a gift giver. Our reporter, Jeremy Hołodniuk, asked residents of Warsaw what presents they received on this joyous day.
Mikołajki, or St. Nicholas Day in English, is kind of a big deal in Poland. We believe that on the night preceding December 6th, St. Nicholas comes to our houses and leaves presents in our shoes, or in our beds, under the pillow, for example. So we went to the Christmas decorated old town in Warsaw to ask people, have they received any gifts already, and what does the name Mikołajki means for them?
I have received a gift. I received some chocolates from my boyfriend, and actually that's it. But it was a very nice gift from him.
Actually, yesterday or today they gave us some cookies, so very nice stuff.
When I was younger, I used to receive toys or boxes of chocolates.
On this day, I want to have under my pillow a little sweets and presents maybe.
Even though we've been hearing Christmas songs here in Poland for weeks now, and Christmas decorations are already here, it's December 6th that traditionally starts the Christmas period. And even though it's intended specifically for children, my mom called me before I started preparing this report and told me that something was waiting in my shoes. So I'm gonna wrap this up and head home because my inner child can't wait to open up those gifts. For TVP World, Jeremy Hołodniuk.
And now back to our heated topic unfolding in Poland. Jarosław Kaczynski, the leader of Poland's largest opposition party, has lost his immunity in the Polish parliament earlier today. Now, the chairman of the Conservative Law and Justice Party is accused of punching an activist who, as Kaczynski points out, insulted the memory of his late brother, former Polish President Lech Kaczynski. Now, joining me now in studio to discuss these unfolding events is Jovanka Jakubek-Lalik, Associate Professor at the Faculty of Law and Administration at the University of Warsaw. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Professor, now Kaczynski's loss of immunity is quite a significant development. Of course, it's going to be spoken about here quite a lot. Now, from a legal standpoint, what are the immediate consequences of Kaczynski's losing his immunity?
Well, first of all, the parliamentary immunity is designed to protect members of parliament from being detained on some basis which would not allow them to perform their functions. So this institution is of crucial importance in any democratic state, which means that in order to accuse a politician or actually make them accountable, the parliament needs to agree. And this is what happened today. And Jarosław Kaczyński, who is the leader of the opposition in the Polish parliament, has been stripped of this immunity, meaning that these allegations that he assaulted one of the activists can be then brought forward against him by the public prosecution.
So, but could this lead to actually formal charges or a full trial? What are we looking at here?
Well, the immunity protects the politician, the member of parliament, both against civil accusations and criminal charges, yes, which means that it doesn't really matter if it's a civil trial or a criminal trial. In both of these cases, currently with this striped immunity, Jarosław Kaczyński can face this procedure.
On the other hand, is there any way that he could avoid punishment?
Well, the base of this procedure is that all of the citizens of Poland are equal when it comes to the law, and their accountability, the base is the same, meaning that the members of parliament, the politicians, are not standing above the law. They are subject to the same procedures as all the other citizens. Having said that, we can also say that the politicians should actually give the example to the citizens about their proper behaviors, meaning that if he actually assaulted this person, he should be accountable for that.
And I mean, about this assault, how do you interpret Kaczynski's justification for this alleged assault, claiming that the activist actually insulted his brother?
Mm-hmm. If the activist insulted his brother, it's not the best way to approach him and to punch him in the face. We should expect a different type of behavior. Of course, Jarosław Kaczyński, as every citizen in Poland, is entitled to legal protection of his rights and also to the memory of his brother. But there are legal means to do that, and physical assault.
What are some of the legal defenses that he may be able to use to try and protect himself?
He could have taken this person to court. He could have made a specific allegation that this person is harming his late brother's memory, or he's offended by the actions or words of this person. So there are legal means to do that. He did not use that. Instead of, he turned to, let's say, physical violence, and this is what is supposed to be and investigated, and who knows what the result of the investigation might be.
Professor, this is really taking, really going across the Polish media today, but now how could this incident actually affect his standing within the opposition and his party's credibility?
This is a more complex question, I would say, because here there was even, let's say, a disagreement between coalition partners in the current government, because on one hand there is, of course, a common conception that every citizen should be equal in front of the law, and here there is no disagreement about that. However, whether he should be stripped of immunity based on this specific case, that was discussed between different parties within the government.
President, I want to take you now just through another crisis that is unfolding in Romania, a constitutional crisis. I mean, we have a reporter who is there right now. So many things happening. The court ordered a recount of the votes. I mean, we're talking here about possible Russian interference in Romania's presidential elections, really an unexpected turn of events. How do you see this crisis unfolding? What is your take on this, particularly from the legal point of view?
First of all, it is an unprecedented situation. So we have not seen a situation where, especially in the European Union member state, a court would rule that the election needs to be repeated. And this is really, let's say, a huge issue. However, we still do not know the justification of the ruling, of the judgment of the court, so it remains to be seen what were specifically the arguments that the court used. What we know is that this Wednesday, secret services of Romania have declassified some documents, some evidence that were used by the court to perform the judgment. However, the judgment comes very late in the process. Also, currently, even the process has started, the voting process has started abroad. So Romanian citizens who live abroad already started to cast their votes, meaning that the decision coming so late in the process can cause additional chaos, additional misunderstanding, and also potentially some protests from the citizens who might see the court ruling as the interference in the democratic process of election. So here I would say there are arguments in favor or against. We still don't know exactly what were the arguments that the court decided to be the base of their judgment, and we need to find out more.
And given this political uncertainty, I mean, just like you mentioned, we don't know, but what do you think the future holds for Romania?
Well, according to the decision, current president will remain in office until the next voting will take place. So the voting should be redone, meaning that there will be another elections. I'm not sure whether the far-right candidate is going to be also standing in these elections, because he was accused of being supported by Russian hybrid interference, and also there are some question marks about his political campaign, as he claimed that he didn't spend any money on the campaign.
And he used TikTok, right? Particularly TikTok.
Yes, and he just gained this kind of very large popularity using social media. Yes, so still we cannot see how the process will unfold, but it's going to be a very hot topic in Romanian politics for sure.
Thank you so much, Jovanka Jakubek-Lalic, Associate Professor at the Faculty of Law and Administration, the University of Warsaw, for being with us here and breaking it down with the situation happening in Poland and in Romania.
Thank you for having me.
And that's all for this edition of World News Tonight here on TVP World, but do stay with us as more on the constitutional and democratic crises around the globe, particularly in Romania, is coming up, and Adam Yase is on the record right after this bulletin. Have a good night.